Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it fine?
Yeah,
Yep,
we
you're
can
doing fine.
hear you, and actually we are on air. Okay, guys, we are on air. We have Andrey Lipattsev, senior strategist from Google. Oh, you can clearly see he's from Google. Yeah, well, last time he was trying to sell us some kind of cushion successfully, and but today is Google, clearly Google. Okay, we have what is this? What is this?
Android cushion.
Cushion. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. We have everyone. Great. Okay, guys. So we have senior strategist from Irish office from Dublin, Andrey Lipattsev. We have Ammon Jones from England, old England, and we have. I'm doing it usually because Google tell me to do it from left to right. So Ammon, for some reason, always on the left. Then it's Andrey, and then it's Eric Enge, and Rand. Okay, great, Rand. Nice to see you. Okay, we've done. It's a third one. Andrew and Ammon. They've been here 3 times. So Eric is the second time, and Rand is first time. Okay, Rand, I'll explain your rules. Rules are very clear. No rules here. No rules here. So far, we didn't need the rules, and I'm pretty sure we won't need them. Okay, so for everyone who were reading our announce, Bill Slawski won't be here. He is not available. Okay, but we still have brilliant, and extremely famous SEO guys or digital marketing. For some reason, people tend to say I'm not SEO, digital marketing guys. We have Fran Fishkin, we have Eric Enge, we have Ammon Jones. We also have Google here, and Google is Irish office senior strategist Andrey Lipattsev, and well, we can clearly see he's from Google. Okay, my part is finished. I have a license to ask stupid questions. You don't. Well, because you're the experts. Yeah. Okay. It's all you guys.
So, experts, open your mouths and start talking.
Yeah. Well, I've got it easy this week because I am going to be asking Bill's questions on his behalf because he obviously couldn't be here today.
I mean, don't feel like you can't ask your own questions.
Well, because I thought some of his would make you wriggle more, Andrew. So, you know, I'm still going to ask you my main one to make you wriggle because I know you are really looking forward to exploring what you can talk about Rankbrain. I can imagine you haven't heard that topic come up.
I've been opening up all of Gary's tweets just to make sure that I can just reiterate that.
There you
Hopefully
go.
we can talk about it a bit more.
So I'm going to ask one of Bill's first, actually, because I thought this was a great one. Why remove the PageRank toolbar if PageRank is still a part of Google's ranking algorithms, which of course we all believe it is, even if it wasn't used on its own. So why is toolbar PageRank a bad thing?
I get it, and it's a really good question, and I promise you I do have a couple of answers which I hope are reasonable, prepared, but let me ask you a question back. And obviously this was Bill's question, but I can ask all of you guys here. Why do you think it was useful in the first place? Why was it a good thing to have?
Well, I mean, from my point of view, since you stopped updating it, that to me it no longer contained value. And to me, the primary value of removing it was to increase the value of Moz's domain authority and page authority metric. I had to stick that in there. Sorry, Rand. Hi, how are you?
Good to see you.
That's a really good point. I mean, this is it. Andrew, when it was still being updated, the use to me was it helped me give a rough idea of what the crawl priority of a site might be.
Right.
And for that reason, it was useful to me because I could see if I get a client coming to me, they've been following some SEO advice, you know, they've had the blog, they've had the newsfeed, they've built up thousands and thousands of pages, but they've got a toolbar page rank of 2. I'm already thinking, do you know what? With a page rank of 2, they're going to be lucky to get 1,000 pages regularly spidered and indexed every month, given that there are so many news sites, there's so many things that Google has to pick up all of the time. This just isn't going to be a high enough priority with this toolbar to have this number of pages. They may be giving Google more than it can digest, and therefore detracting from where the value is, the core pages. So it had a use there. It had a second use, which is more financial. Lots and lots of bad SEOs used to base their strategy on toolbar PageRank. As long as they're doing a bad job, there was more work for people doing a good job like myself.
By all means, and I think the second reason alone would have been sufficient to get rid of it.
Yep.
But I mean, you know, if that was the only reason, we probably would have tried to keep on working on that. You know that it wasn't so much removed as it died a natural death more than anything, because nobody was looking at it. You know, I think we're getting a bit of background noise from somewhere. Anton, can you? I'm getting a bit of.
We've got some children somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm at my office, so no children here.
Someone has children somewhere. Anyway, so now that the background is gone, as I was saying, nobody was looking at it, nobody was developing it because it wasn't bringing very much value internally, right? And so it essentially became so out of date that then when going back to Ammon's first points about its usefulness, they kind of all went away, leaving only the second value there. So, you know, it was no longer, actually for two reasons as well, it was no longer a valid benchmark for a site's usefulness, for a site's likelihood to be crawled more often or ranked well, because A, it was out of date, and B, there were a lot of other things in place where you're saying, you know, toolbar page rank 2 would have made it less likely to be crawled. Not really. There's a lot of other stuff in place, and the page rank 2 could have been ranked above page rank 8 very easily, depending on what else was going on.
That's ranking, though, which is, I'm not saying ranking, I'm just talking about indexing, and I found the correlation there across thousands of sites was very high.
But that link to me, I mean, this was before my time, but that link to me is so tenuous between toolbar PageRank and indexing that I'm not even sure that link ever really existed. It was supposed to be a reflection of the actual page rank of a page, and that has no bearing on how often a page gets scrolled. Probably some bearing.
The actual page rank, I'd have used that, believe me, but you wouldn't share that. I did ask.
Well, then, as in, you know, I can understand, you know, the sort of the second degree links between the site's page's page rank and how often it would come back to it, but there's a lot of other things in play there that also need to be taken into account. So no matter what you're thinking about, whether crawling or ranking, it has gradually become just one thing out of very many, and therefore not reflective of the real picture. And B, it stopped reflecting what it was supposed to reflect in the first place. So it wasn't very useful. And as I said, C, you know, it became something that it was never supposed to be. It became something of a currency, really, for some SEOs. And I'm not saying everybody was doing it, but clearly, as you yourself acknowledge, a lot of people started using it like that. And, you know, a lot of SEO contracts would be, I will get your toolbar page rank to this, which is kind of meaningless, really. And so what I was going to tell you beforehand is this reduced meaningfulness, and also we'll kind of don't treat this as a shameless plug, treat this as a shameful plug. But we are hoping that the stats and the improved stats that we are providing now, for example, through Search Console, the improved Search Analytics report, are the stats you should be looking at. They are the bots you're looking for. You know, your clicks and your impressions and the queries and the pages. That's what you should be looking at. And as an owner, as an SEO, comparing it to other people if you have that data, and so on and so forth, and build both your strategies and your analysis on this kind of data, not just this one number, which was kind of neither here nor there. Not to mention, in fact, that last but not least, I have not seen that famous toolbar in which it was supposed to be a plugin on anyone's computer for a long time. And granted, I'm a very biased sample because most people around me have Macs and Linux machines anyway, but just I haven't seen anybody with the toolbar with the thing in it.
Well, it stopped being updated, so they all
But
uninstalled it.
just
But
not even
up until it had
but
been.
not just that page rank in the toolbar. I'm talking about the toolbar itself. It's supposed to be on a particular browser. I think not that many people around me use that browser anymore. So, you know.
Next question.
So I have one which I want to talk a little bit about click-through rate. And I want to talk about it from a couple of perspectives. I think those of us on the call know that Rand at SMX Munich, I believe, ran a fresh test that showed at least a temporary movement of the ranking of an item that they were trying to promote by sending a lot of clicks to the page, where it kind of jumped in the rankings, and then over time it came back down. And then, in addition, Paul Haar gave a keynote at SMX West in which he walked through, how Google works, it was called, and he talked for a while about click-through rate, more in the context of it's something that we will do, we, being Google in this case, will do as controlled tests. Excuse me, we'll roll out some algorithm change, and one of the things we might look at is the user click-through rate on the revised search results in order to see whether that's a better result. And then he also explained that the reason why you don't use it as a general ranking factor is because it's too gameable, but in this controlled test environment, it allows you to use user interaction with the results as a way of measuring search quality and decide whether to roll out a new algo update. And just to finish my rather complex question, the point of that is that it seems to me that if you're using click-through rate as a QA measurement of, call it other ranking factors, to better measure search quality, it doesn't really matter to me that much whether it's a direct ranking factor or an indirect ranking factor. It still is used in evaluating search quality. That was a lot of stuff I just said. So,
yeah, well, I mean, and I think to this, I think I'm kind of with you there. And both what Paul said, I'm not going to disagree with Paul, and but also what we've been saying before. I think if you look through the majority of our past comments on this topic, you won't hear anything to the contrary, or you won't find anything to the contrary. We do, if you like, use that as a factor to assess our quality and treat it as you like. Yeah, fair enough. In that sense, if you'd like to, it's very important then, because you know how headlines go. And tomorrow's headlines and all will be, anybody who watches us today will be, Google uses behavioral factors for ranking, and that's not, and you know what people will interpret from that. Because on the one hand, yes, in the sense that you described. On the other hand, no, in the sense that most people understand. So it's very important always to kind of come in with a slightly more complicated explanation. Somebody commented to me the other day about being able to answer yes or no to questions. And sometimes, and I told them that, sometimes sometimes the questions are just not yes or no. Even if you phrase them in a yes or no fashion, it doesn't make it possible to give a yes or no answer. So anyway, coming back to what you said, I think you described it pretty accurately.
So can I follow up briefly?
Yeah,
by the way, Andrey, great to see you. Thanks for having me join in. This is definitely very fun and awesomely transparent of you guys. I have to commend you. That's just really cool. So I'll make it not a yes or no question, but maybe in your opinion, why is it the case that 7 times, I think it's either 7 or 8 times in the last 2 years, I've done something, just having a little fun, right? So I'll be standing on a stage in front of 500 to a couple thousand people, and I'll ask them, hey, can you all jump on your mobile phones or on your laptops and do a search? And I want you to click the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th result. And then over the next 24 hours, let's observe what happens to that what happens to that query and what happens to that page's ranking for that query. And consistently, consistently, I shouldn't say that. I think it's, I've had 7 or 8 of those that have been successful, and I've had 4 or 5 where the ranking did not change. And I've run a few of them over Twitter. Again, a few where the ranking did change and change pretty quickly and usually sticks around a day or two, and a few where nothing happened. So in your opinion, what's happening there that's making the ranking for the page that gets clicked on change so rapidly? And then what's happening when it falls back down, again, relatively rapidly over the next day to 2-3 days?
It's hard to judge immediately like that without actually looking at the data in front of me. As you said, in my opinion, and what my best guess here would be is the general interest that you generate around that subject. And I think Eric has mentioned that, if I'm not mistaken, the French situation quite recently or something like that, the test.
Yeah.
You just, by doing that, you generate exactly the sort of signals that we are looking out for. Mentions and links and social tweets and social mentions, which are basically more links to the page, more mentions of this context. I suppose it throws us off for a while until we're able to establish that none of that is relevant to what we were, to the user intent, I suppose, right? To the way we really understand it. Because
so if I were to try to draw that out a little bit, again, first of all, I want to acknowledge what you said before. We do understand that it's sometimes very difficult to answer questions yes or no. And like when I do training presentations and things for people, and they ask me questions, the first question I always answer, that the answer to every SEO question is, it depends. And then you just go from there, because it's a good answer for all of them. But it sounds to me like, in the case of some of the tests that Rand has done, that there might be something that's going on that's temporal in nature, where you're seeing a burst of activity around something, and you're responding to it kind of like a trending item, and therefore that's Rand, maybe that's generating the behavior. I'm speculating on Randy's behalf here, but something maybe that's what's going on.
Thing is, without looking at sort of live at the way that data is changing inside the system, we can't really tell.
I mean, open offer. I'm happy to shoot you an email next time I run one of these, and you can watch and see what's happening, and then we can observe it together.
We can try to do that. That would be useful. Absolutely, if you do that. And point is, yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think let's do that. Let's take a look and see what we find out.
That'd be fun. That sounds interesting.
I know.
So back to the broader part of my question. Also, just want to acknowledge that I agree that a lot of people might run off and say, "Oh my God, click-through rate is a ranking factor in a more general sense," and I think I personally have an understanding why that would be bad, because it's so gameable. But if you look at it more holistically, it seems to me that engagement signals and way that users interact with content, using that as an indirect thing where you're using it to qualify search quality so that you can pick other ranking signals that reflect that well. As I internalize that, it gives me, I think, more ammunition to point people towards make better websites and better web pages. And that's the reason why I was asking the question, because to me, I like to be able to show people and talk to people why that's so important and why they should think to themselves that this will help them over time with their SEO.
I think
not because you're applying it directly in your algorithm, but because you're using it to qualify your algorithm.
Eric, I think you're absolutely right. And then your message to the people that you work with is absolutely spot on. I think it is already significant enough that we look at what users do on our search result pages as we change them to evaluate the usefulness of these changes for people to take into account. You know, when Google changes the algorithm the next time and my page gets exposed and people like it or don't like it, come to it, don't come to it, you know, I should probably pay attention to how people like or don't like what I'm trying to offer them as part of the general, as part of what it appears like in Google search results. The disadvantages that I've most often seen described, and also could probably agree to myself as well, to this approach on a site, on a sort of on a clear, pure ranking factor basis, is that we need to have broad enough and reliable enough data about bounce rates, click-through rates, depth of view for the majority of pages and the majority, well, a large majority, vast majority of pages and vast majority of websites everywhere, in order to be able to make meaningful comparisons all the time. That is impossible, right? Because we don't have the technical means to do it. Not every, even when you think about Google Analytics, just not everybody has a Google Analytics code, by far, not everybody. So we can't use that, and we don't use that. What else are we going to use? We can start trying to come up with something that we could use, but it's always going to be a struggle, because as opposed to, going back to the original idea of links, you can kind of reasonably say, I see a page, I see the links on that page, I see where they're going. If they're there, we can see them. Granted, they can be not followed, they can be hidden, that's like little things, but by and large, they're here, we can see them, we can use them. The words on the page, they're here, we can see them, we can use them. This stuff, you can kind of, yeah, any reasonable person with a bit of experience could think of ways how you could measure user behavior for particular pages and particular websites. Measuring it the web-wide.
Andrey, correct me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't need it particularly web-wide. You only need it on the search queries, right? So Google sees that.
Right, but is that enough?
On average,
you say you don't need it. That's what I'm saying. So think about this is different, because imagine we only ever measured the links for pages that appear in our results. It would immediately oil like the top 10 of our results, right? You'd immediately.
So maybe I'm talking about a smaller subset of types of queries.
Exactly, right? So you end up with a very small subset of everything that's out there, and the worst thing about it is you end up just reviewing only that, because that's the only thing that ever gets clicked on, because that's the only thing that ever gets shown.
Well,
it's like you can find ways to get out of it. I agree with you. Like you can find ways around it and solutions to it. But this is the reason why we've been saying, and Matt has been saying, it's a tough challenge. It's gameable on the one hand, and it's a tough challenge to actually make a very strong signal out of it. So if we solve it, good for us. But we're not there yet.
I mean, I think that you have filed some patents and written some papers about using pogo sticking, and pogo sticking certainly seems like a very reasonable way to measure, the quality of search results. If something gets a lot of clicks and then people click back and they click on something else, clearly that result didn't satisfy them or didn't fully satisfy them. So that seems like a really reasonable user approach.
It is a reasonable approach. It is one of them. So as a patent goes, that's an interesting idea. But then you have to take into account. So what if the nature of the query is such that you will do that? You're comparing things. You want to see this one and you want to see another one, and then you want to make a decision. So all these things come into account, which is why I think Ammon is going to be particularly happy when we come to the topic of Rankbrain, for example. So we experiment and explore other ways, not just this, but can we look at what queries are, and can we just go back to the basics of what's the content on the page? How can we understand that better, and how can we understand the entities on the page, and so on. So I think there can be more research done into user behavior factors and how to use them well. But there's also like a million other avenues of research, and maybe some of them will be more promising.
Cool. It just made me think of when Eric said it depends is one of the classic answers in all SEO. It made me think immediately that so much is also true of Google. Pogo sticking, clicking on a result and coming back. It depends whether that's a good signal or a bad signal. Is it so fast that it meant they actually misclicked? They didn't mean to click the result at all. And I know that one of the patents discounted any return to cert within 15 seconds as a possible misclick. Not necessarily a misclick, but just because it could be, discount those. Let's take off the bottom ones, and now we'll just look at this set, the ones that are longer than that. But if it's more than, say, 40, 50 seconds, they may have actually got the answer. Maybe they were looking for quotes by George Gershwin. And there's a whole load, well, they got a satisfactory answer. So if it was more than 40 seconds, it also satisfied them. So you ended up actually only looking at bounces that happened within a very tight time frame. And there's other situations where this happens, particularly when we get things like news stories.
Yeah, or comparison shopping, where you're actually wanting to look at several different sites and compare the scenarios. That's another one.
Yeah,
exactly.
Before Hurricane Katrina, if somebody searched for Katrina, they were probably either looking up some models' pictures or they wanted to know about Katrina and the Waves, the pop group. So, you know, the results that had worked suddenly needed to change within hours. And there are parts of Google that are able to adapt very quickly.
Exactly, yeah. You know, we look at freshness, in particular for queries like this, and all this stuff comes into play. But I was going to say, ultimately, the proof of that pudding is in the eating. And so the proof of any change that we try to introduce, as Eric has pointed in the beginning, is then looking at our own search results and saying, okay, so when we introduce this change, let's say, you know, tomorrow we start suddenly measuring the depth of view on a page.
But I think that particular part, the freshness, the what's trending algorithm answers what Rand was asking about what can cause a result to seem to change quite quickly and then fall back. I think it is that kind of trend.
That would be one thing I would also potentially look at. But what I'm saying is that we've not had statistical proof that this helps our search results. And, you know, until we see that, you've seen, I think many people who are interested have seen that launch committee meeting. It was reasonably transparent and frank, but probably mild by comparison to some of them that happen. And engineers fret quite a bit when they are pushing for a ranking change, and they really need to have solid data to back it up. So pushing for something like, oh, you know, this could work. It might be 15 seconds, might be 40 seconds, we're not sure. Let's try to make it work. Unless you come to the meeting with solid data proving that, yeah, you know what, we rolled it out over a serious percentage of searches, and it's awesome, it's not going to fly, no matter how many patents you've filed.
Yeah.
So just, you know, total transparency on my end. So we did run 2 pogo sticking tests as well, both of which were successful. Granted, that you could say that maybe there's a lot of other conflating factors. In those cases, we just had, I think, around 800 people and then around something over 1,200 people click on a search result, click back to the search results page, and choose another one. And the one that they chose rose reasonably quickly to the top, and again stuck around for I think it was 3 days. I wrote that one up on my blog, so you can find the sort of, you know, here's exactly the time frame of it. And we did that one more time. So we can run some more of those. That might be another fun one to try, just to see why it might be happening.
Yep. All right, moving on.
Ammon, do you want to?
I have like 2 questions in half an hour, so maybe we should speed up a little bit.
Yeah.
We should.
Andrey. It's good.
I'm going to go straight for that main one because I want to make sure we do get time to go to that, and we usually run out of time before we run out of questions. So I'm going to combine this with Bill's version of the same thing. Now, for me, Rankbrain has become this new keyword that everyone's latched onto. I'm seeing already companies, you know, selling. Oh, we're the SEOs who've taken into account the latest Rankbrain upgrades, despite the fact they can't possibly, because we're all still examining what it does, what its limitations are, and there's no way of knowing that from the outside completely, especially since it seems to combine with several other. Bill has been looking at patents for this, and there's several different patents over a period of years that all relate to each other and are similar, but do slightly different things. Now, my understanding of Hummingbird is that it's led to this, that Hummingbird was kind of giving us the changes around the time of Hummingbird brought in more context, more idea that the meaning of the query was more important than the words of the query. And I think the natural consequence of that was there's times when it isn't. There are times when the way we've worded it is very, very specific. And it seems that Rankbrain is one method of being able to spot Gary Ilias's example was the word without. That one word was the most important word of the query. How can I complete this without such and such? You know, without couldn't be changed. So is that kind of where we're going with this? But Bill's point was, you know, we've heard that this is the third most important signal contributing to results now. Would it be beneficial to us to know what the first two is? Could webmasters build better sites if they knew what the first two are?
I can tell you what they are. It's content and links pointing to your site.
In that order or the other order?
There is no order. You know? And I'm not even sure. And the third place is a hotly contested issue. I think it's a funny one. Take this with a grain of salt. I think, you know, it's obviously up to Greg the way he chose to phrase that when he was doing it, and I understand where he was coming from, being somebody who worked on that. The way I interpret his meaning is that if you look at a slew of search results and sort of open up the debugger and see what has come into play to for such and such a query, for such and such a page, certain things pop up more or less often. So certain elements of the algorithm come into play for fewer or more pages in fewer or more cases. And so I guess if you do that, then you'd see elements of Rankbrain having been involved in here, rewriting this query, applying it like this over here. And so you'd say, you know, I see this like 2 times as often as the other thing and half as often as the other thing. So it's somewhere on number 3. It's not like having 3 links is X important and having 5 keywords is Y important, and Rankbrain is some Z factor that is also somehow important, and then you multiply all of that. That's not how this works. I think the way we can look at it in a useful way is that we are trying to get better at understanding natural language and at applying machine learning at saying, okay, so what are the meanings behind the inputs? In particular, when you think about the fact that it's still early days, we cannot claim that typed queries, whether mobile or desktop, have reasonably subsided or are going away. But more and more so, people are interacting with their devices using voice. So we can expect the use of stop words and words like, as Gary mentioned, without, maybe other operators of this kind, a lot more often than you would, because people still tend to be a lot more mechanic and kind of overthink their queries a little bit, as I tend to anyway. I tend to think, okay, so what is a query that is completely non-human in nature that sounds like what a machine would understand? Let me type that. I don't know if you guys catch yourselves doing that. You don't generally type a question to Google as you would ask a real person. And I think that's what
I do detect myself when I start doing it in natural language. Just, wait, that's wrong. And I realize, oh, wait.
I do structured queries. I kind of, right, what's the most important concept? Right, I'll put that first. Then what's the modifier to that? And then
so you've got to admit that in this sense, we are pretty advanced users, a little bit kind of outside the norm in this sense. And as a company, I guess we're striving towards moving, well, not so much stopping to support us guys, because I think we'll figure our way out, but to start supporting better people who are just joining the net, and to whom, for example, the mobile experience is their first experience, and Google search application is their first experience of interacting with the web and getting answers to their questions. And they don't know that you need to say robotic words and omit commas, dots, ends, stop words, everything. They just speak. And they will say, yeah, how can I complete Mario Kart without cheating? I'm not going to think about the word without in that sense. So it's on to us then to figure out, right, well, what's behind all of that. And I think there was a bit of conversation on Twitter as well with Gary involved about, so what does this affect? Does this affect indexing? Does this affect ranking? And Gary was trying to say, well, no, it doesn't affect ranking. It's not a ranking factor. It becomes a very complex conversation when you get to that, because it's
ultimately everything affects ranking. Otherwise, there's no point having it.
Well, ultimately, I guess so. Yes, I mean, ultimately, even your web page's accessibility affects ranking, because if we can't access them, we can't rank them. You know,
yeah.
Even at that level. But I guess it doesn't affect the ranking of an individual page, what it does affect is our understanding of a query. And so once our understanding of a query changes, we're very likely to show something different as a result for that, right? So that's the effect that it has. But it's not the same effect as knowing, there's so and so many links pointing to the page, or as knowing that there's such and such words on that page. That's something else. And I think you mentioned Hummingbird. The very sort of initial roots of that are in the synonymization attempts, attempts at understanding synonyms better and replacing them. All the way back then, those were just libraries. I suppose it's to some extent static libraries. This is much more interesting. This is also, as Greg has said and some of the other guys have said, half jokingly, I guess, we don't know what it's doing because we're not supposed to know because it's machine learning. That's the whole point. You kind of throw it out there and then it does its stuff. But the ideas behind is this. And they're the same as when we started talking about knowledge graph and introduced it. And that became, now very much part and parcel of our search results. People expect it to be there. People expect that for entities. 3 years ago, I remember it quite vividly. I think must have been 2013. I was at a conference in Russia and we introduced this for the first time. It was a bit of a struggle to explain what is it that we're doing. What are we doing with all these new things? What are these entities and how is it different from words? Now people just expect it. You're looking for an actor, you're looking for a city, you're looking for an event. Yeah, you want to see that card. We'll have a thing from a source, some follow-on links, and it's just that's the experience. So this is hopefully enhancing that experience, allowing us to understand what else has that potential, what else can be explained in such a way, what else can be understood better, and things, negative queries as Gary called them. Yep, that's definitely one thing that hopefully is going to work better from now on.
So there's some things that, there's been so much confusion that's spun out of this, and there's some things that I think we can perhaps help people understand a little better here. So as you described it, Andrey, and as in the conversations I've had with Gary about it and other Googlers, so better understand language to help us better match queries with appropriate web pages from a relevance perspective. Sort of period, end of sentence, doesn't take over other ranking factors. Is that a fair top-level assessment?
I suppose, yes. Probably have to see that in writing to make sure that I fully understand every single word of it and how they fit together. But yes, generally speaking, yeah, Eric, I think I'm there with you.
Eric, can I slightly disagree with that last sentence in there? And this is just based on what Gary and I tweeted back and forth the other day, which is, I think the idea of Rankbrain is that it can reorder or reweight ranking elements in order to produce more relevant results.
I think that was I understand what he wrote. I'm still, based on the discussions I've had, I'm still at ranking factors here.
Yep.
Better match query with content does impact ranking, but it doesn't change whether you pick a link signal as a ranking factor or some other signals a ranking factor.
You have to understand, you pick them all at the same time. But I mean, at the very simple level, if in the example that Gary gave with the Mario Karts without cheats, right? It's just that it's not the weight that you assign to the word without in that query and its presence on the pages that you are going to show for this or not going to show for this. It's more the fact that how you treat this word. You start this. It's almost I don't know. It's hard to kind of structure this answer clearly as well. Because when you look at it like that, I'm almost prone to saying, yeah, it is a ranking factor, because now we're going to grab onto those pages that do have this word, but it's not just about the word without, right? It's about the context of the whole discussion around this on this page, right? And the funny thing is that I guess it's not looking only at it's looking at what's on the page, but also how well it met the expectations of people who then interacted with that. Is that, did us guessing that this particular word indicated a particular intent? Was that a right kind of guess? And gathering that data continuously and then saying, you know what, fair enough. Now we're kind of confident that these words or these combinations of words indicate a particular intent, so we need to pay attention to such and such content. But it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden links are more or less important for this page or that page. They're still as important as they were, but now we say, well, but there's also this other thing. On top of everything we know, we also know that for this query, this is particularly important.
So one of the things, we've been having this little back and forth in the side chat. We were saying that one of the reasons that this is so tricky for Googlers to answer is that sometimes changing the query, your understanding of the query, can change the ranking factors a little bit. There are certain factors we know about your money or your life ones, for example, where when a query is to do with finance or health, you are much more careful about the answers given. There are extra factors of trust that should be applied. Now,
Right.
where a query might not have been understood to be about finance or about health, those wouldn't be in effect, and by better understanding it, it suddenly is, so it can change that. You can also say that where you've got a query where it has demand for freshness, i.e. we're looking for news here. Again, if you didn't understand the query was about news, that wouldn't be applied, and links would count more. Whereas once you do understand this is actually about a news story, freshness counts more. And so it can affect rankings, but only through better understanding of the query. Is that about right?
That's the way I look at it, at least. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of comments about this, and probably the discussion will go on, but that's the way I see this at the moment.
Right. So, but we've been having an argument here in the side chat, and what we just said is consistent with my understanding of what makes sense. I don't see that as changing the core ranking algos, but it might change the core ranking algos you choose to apply to the query, because your understanding of the query changed.
Can I ask a quick question that's semi-related, which is just around machine learning? You know, obviously Rankbrain is one of the places where you're most public about it. I think another place where Google's very public about use of machine learning is in image search, and it's really cool what you've been able to do, you know, identifying locations of images and features of images. A few years ago, there was some talk about using whether to use, or, you know, would Google use or not machine learning in web spam, and would they use it in other sorts of ranking factors, like around links and content. Are there any of those elements that you can answer and say, like, yes, actually we have been using machine learning in other factors like spam or links or content or something else, and that's been useful to us because XYZ?
I can say that we've definitely been looking at using machine learning across the board, including web spam, including other areas. I mean, when you say other areas, I'm not even sure what other areas are, I guess, because you just named all of them.
Oh, okay.
Search, images, spam, what else is there?
I don't know. I mean, I could imagine maps and locations. I could certainly imagine, you know, news, demand for freshness or diversity, other kinds of things.
Right. So I couldn't speak that well for maps. I would not be surprised if the guys have been trying to apply that in map searches as well. And of course, maybe if you look at it so more broadly and you look into the other areas where Google search is used, for sure, right? So start thinking about scroller and so on and so forth, where I'm a little less au fait with what's going on, but yeah. In web spam, I can't point towards any particular huge success we've had in using this immediately, but I'm quite confident that we'll continue exploring this, right? And I'm quite confident that even the the effects of trying to apply this have been very beneficial, and just the learnings from that.
I mean, one of the concerns, you know, one of the things that frustrates, I think, a lot of SEOs and marketers, you know, I know a lot of folks who, for example, speak about SEO in the US or in the UK will travel, I'll travel, for example, to Eastern Europe, right? And I'll speak at an event there, and people come up to me and they'll say, oh, yeah, you know, all that stuff about focusing on quality and content, that sounds really nice. But in fact, buying links here is really still very effective. And, you know, that's what works for me and for my clients. And so, yeah, this whole quality content thing you're talking about, you know, that hasn't made its way to our country or our region yet. I don't know how honest they're being, but I definitely get the sense when I look at
thumbs up comment, and I think he knows very well what you're talking about, and I do as well. I'm going to Ukraine in like a week and a half. I'm going to hear a lot of this.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be in Belarus afterwards, so I'm going to have the full kind of And I get it every time. That and when we're very connected to, we try to be as connected as we possibly can to the majority of our markets. We're definitely very connected to the Eastern European ones.
Yeah.
So thank you for this question, because I have actually quite a bit to say about this. So let me try to get through as much as I can, and actually maybe hear a bit from you guys as well. First of all, it's what people say, what works and what doesn't work. And the way I also see this is what is spam per se and what isn't spam. And sometimes there are techniques which are borderline and which we haven't begun to understand fully yet, and maybe I'm not fully globally aware of the application or use, and therefore they might be applied sort of topically somewhere and working there. No, we just haven't gotten around to saying, okay, you know what, we should probably take a look at that and stop it from working, because it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
So that's number one, right? Sometimes things are just not yet have not yet been defined as spam, or even sometimes you look at stuff and you kind of go, freedom of speech comes into play, and us being a reflection of the internet comes into play, and you kind of go, you know what, like we do have to draw a line somewhere. Like at a certain point, yes, it is our responsibility to say, this is beyond low quality. This is harming our users. We'll take active measures. Whilst that is the kind of weird, kind of not nice, but there's nothing else. So, and not really harming anybody. So let it be. Great example. You were talking about buying links. I'm kind of hoping that in Eastern Europe, where we have, particularly the further east you go, where we have really strong competition, the fact that our competitors are also our colleagues as far as web spam fighting is concerned, and they're taking active measures against a lot of this stuff as well. Hopefully this message will get reinforced, that really this doesn't work, and definitely doesn't work long term, and the concept of investing into short-term gains just don't pay off. Even if you win for a couple of days or even month, that's just it doesn't make any sense for anybody serious about their business. This is the second thing I was going to say. As much as we'd like, and when I say we, I mean both us and maybe other search engines as well, you can't control the macroeconomics of some of the markets where we operate, and especially in the more volatile ones, people will still go in for the short-term gain because they are not able to plan beyond a couple of months, because they have no idea what's going to happen, not to the internet or Google, but to the economy in a couple of months. You need to rank now, make money now, and who cares afterwards. And it's really tough to operate in that environment. It's not less tough, and there are other challenges in more developed markets, and financial crises also happen. But still, it's easier to work with content that's there for the long run, with creators that are there for the long run, with whom you can have a meaningful dialogue and try things and see what works, and then everybody kind of thinks that you're in this for the long haul and more or less try to make it work for everybody. It's more difficult when people are forced into making short-term decisions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have to kind of react in a measured way as well, right? Because you need to realize that there are businesses and livelihoods and organizations behind the websites. So you need to measure, okay, so what do we do in a situation like this? The other one is a famous one. I don't know if that quote ever made it to the English part of the internet. When Vladimir Ofitserov, some of you might know him, he was involved most recently in our Twitter integration efforts. So when he was speaking actually that was, I think, an interview to one of the Russian publishers some years ago, he gave a very funny example, that there were no results for a particular query, which was really funny. It was something like buying a bucket in a small rural city somewhere in Russia, something like that. Like something that you wouldn't expect really to anybody to sell there, and there are no results for it. And I think it became a bit of a meme, the whole thing. But the point behind this is that in a lot of Eastern European, but not just Eastern European markets, I think it's an issue for the majority of the BRIM countries, for the Arabic-speaking world. There just isn't enough content as compared to the percentage of the population, of the internet population, that those regions represent. I don't have up-to-date data. I know that a couple of years ago we looked at Arabic, for example, and there the disparity was enormous. So, if I'm not mistaken, the Arabic-speaking population of the world is something like 5 to 6%, maybe more. Correct me if I'm wrong. But very definitely the amount of Arabic content in our index is several orders below that. So that means we just don't have enough Arabic content to give to our Arabic users, even if we wanted to. And in some areas, and you can exploit it amazingly easily. And if you create a bit of content in Arabic, whatever it looks like, we're going to go, oh, we don't have anything else, we'll serve this. And it ends up being horrible. And people will say, this works. I keyword stuffed the hell out of this page, bought some links, there it is, #1. There's just nothing else to show, So yeah, you're #1. The moment somebody actually goes out and creates high quality content that's there for the long haul, you'll be out, and that thing will be replaced. One of the things that we try to do, in particular, this is also the reason why I'm traveling there, is really work with those markets and provide the tools and the means to those webmasters and webmasters and SEOs and marketing agencies, the tools, the guidelines, the best practices. Here's what you can do. Here are the tools that Google gives, and so on and so forth.
So as those of us from this hangout and many others are going over and chatting with folks in regions outside of our home countries where maybe this sentiment exists, would it be your assertion that the algorithms, generally speaking, the algorithms that reward content types here in the US or in Western Europe will make their way to other countries as well, other language groups over time?
Fair to say that the algorithms are already there, right? It's just that the content that we're seeing is kind of... I don't want to offend anybody, I don't want to say that the kind of content that these algorithms now exist for, that kind of content doesn't exist. I don't want to say that, on average, US pages...
But it's just not as prevalent.
Better, but it's the technology is used and the approach is used. They've moved on so much, as you guys know. In some parts of the world, and again, English-speaking is a very broad name, but in the Western English-speaking world, they've moved on so much, and we've adapted to them, and therefore we've opened up, what you might call holes or exploits then for other types of content and other types of behaviors. And we'll patch them and we'll plug them. It's just that obviously they're less of a priority because we want to keep pace with the new developments and the cool stuff. And you can think about mobile. It was funny, the whole... We're still thinking about this, and now that I mentioned this, clearly I'm going to see some experiments as well. But mobile friendliness. Everybody was very excited a year ago when we started thinking about introducing this, and of course, we were concerned how we're going to present this and the reaction that people will have. And thank you guys, some of you, for creating memes about that as well. But I think by and large, it kind of had a positive reception. By and large, it worked out the way we wanted it to work out, and we try to make sure that it does. But it was funny how some of us, me included, like first thought was, this is awesome. Second thought was, okay, so how are they going to game this? What is going to be the first cloaking page that cloaks mobile friendliness instead of being mobile friendly? And the thing is, other people will go, but that's like more work.
It is more work.
But then you say, but it depends, because it depends what you're going for, right? Because I can think of scenarios where it makes sense to invest into some sort of crazy self-learning algorithm that just generates not really mobile-friendly pages, but then it shows them somewhere, than just doing this normally for normal clients and so on. So it's like this with everything. Now we are looking with a lot of interest into what accelerated mobile pages will be like, and what's the uptake on that going to be? Are they going to be successful or not? We're banking on them. We wish them success, and we want to make them successful. But it's going to be like that again. There's a lot of big publishers globally have bought in. We're trying to do something interesting here, see how it works, and then part of my brain is going, okay, so does this mean that amplified spam is going to rank better now? And what are we going to do about this, Yep. So there's like that with everything. And as I said, we're facing the fundamental difficulties that we're facing are the volatile economic situation, which forces people into short-term decisions. And generally speaking, and you guys are posting in the chat that money speaks English in the Arabic world. To a certain extent, I guess it does, and you could say it's the same for China or Russia. Yeah, clearly it speaks English, but if it only spoke English, then all of us would also only speak English. The other languages still exist, and clearly people are interested in creating and maintaining that content. And I wish that that disbalance that exists right now corrected itself a little bit, and that would definitely solve some of the spam issues as well.
It's been a personal bugbear of mine for years. This isn't the technical code style of SEO, but I really wish more people would realise that they're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy in doing this. The number of emails I get that are very poorly written English where they are determined to write content in English for an English market. Well, because it gets more market share, or it's look. If you were writing in your own language, you've got a much less competitive environment, and you are lifting the local economy. How will that situation change if you play to this situation? It's a bit like the fact that India, fantastic programmers, all working for other countries, making other countries rich.
Well,
India isn't really in a much better position than it was 15 years ago.
We are really this. I mean, I don't think we've never lost focus on the developing world, but this year we are really gunning for the sort of the BRIM countries and countries like that in the process of development across all the departments at Google. But as far as search is concerned, we're really, and you hopefully throughout this year you'll see some really interesting developments there. The initiatives that we launch and the projects that we launch that are hopefully going to enable creators to create content in their languages for the local users. And I'm talking about, you just mentioned India. They got more languages there. Probably, I didn't count really, but probably on par with Europe. Nobody thinks of it that way. India, yeah, it's just everybody's right. You don't. Like a fifth of the population speaks English, and the rest have a lot of stuff that they could share with each other, but they don't. Or at least they don't to the extent that they could. And we're going to try to do as much as we can to help that, to help change that.
Right. It's remembering too that in search, which you basically can enter an arbitrary query of any kind, how difficult it is to have a ready answer for every possible query a human might put in their native language when there aren't that many people creating content in that language. It's a fascinating way of thinking about the whole problem.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick on this front, with regards to, you basically said, Andrey, that there's sort of a global algorithm that it considers inputs the same universally. Is it the case that there are specialized, especially when it comes to web spam, sort of specialized things that fight particular kinds of spam in different regions or languages or countries, or is that a myth that that's not the case? When something's applied, it's applied universally.
As far as our algorithmic solutions are concerned, I don't think so. As far as nothing springs to mind. As far as our algorithmic web spam solutions are concerned, all of them that I can think of are global, which is sometimes part of the problem, because that's the thing. Some of the problems are very local, and in fact, could sometimes be a bit of a vulnerability that the solutions need to be global, and you just have to algorithmically ignore some of the problems. Doesn't mean that we ignore them completely, which is why the manual web spam fighting teams exist, and which is why we have them covering the vast majority, of the big markets that we work in, and that is the solution that we tailor. The things that we do, for example, in Russia or Poland, given the environment that exists there, are not the same as the things we would do in France or Germany, and so on.
Right. Okay, that's great. I appreciate it. Eric, I don't think you got to ask any of your questions.
Well, no, the CTR discussion was mine. Remember that?
Oh,
I started that one early on, but thank you for prompting me there, because I'm always willing to throw something out there.
It's going to have to be a 30-second answer.
I got that. Any comment on the plans for this upcoming mobile update? It's anything that you might be able to share. I mean, I'm not going to pick any particular.
Well, I don't have a number to put on that. We have said it's kind of happening already. We kind of said that we are now going to treat mobile-friendly pages even better in search. We already did. Some of you have commented, I didn't see the results. Well, hopefully you'll see them now. Again, very often, and especially in non-English markets, people comment, hey, I still see a lot of non-mobile friendly pages and results. Part of that is because there just isn't enough content that has become mobile friendly. So you need to kind of show whatever else is available. But with the growth in that content, we kind of say, okay, we can bank on mobile friendliness a bit more now, because we've seen a lot more pages come online and become available for mobile devices. So let's do that. The other exciting thing is that we have a new smartphone user agent that will start running around the web from the 18th. It's not a big thing. I'm kind of personally like the fact that we are kind of keeping up with that and updating that as well.
Yeah, and that's supposed to start rolling out in May. Is that right?
Mid-April. Mid-April.
Oh, mid-April. Okay. Excellent. That was it. I asked a quick one. You asked? I provided.
Well done, sir. I mean, I just want to say personally, thank you so much, Anton, for having me, and Andrey for answering the questions, and Ammon and Eric for being here and joining. This was way more fun and interesting than I even expected. So that was really an honor.
I'm genuinely pleased that you guys will say that. I was gonna suggest to Anton that we make a regular thing of it, and then he kind of told me, well, it is a regular thing.
It's a third one. Yeah, one could be coincidence or whatever accident, or two could be two accidents, but three it's not an accident. It's obviously a regular thing, and funny enough, it's only Ammon, well, beside you of course, who survived the third one. So we don't know how the fourth one will go. I cannot predict it. Okay, guys, if we do have more questions, okay, ask now. If we don't, we're going in 1 hour. We kind of agree we will do it 1 hour. I understand everybody's very busy, well, besides me, because it's already night here anyway. Okay.
Well, I apologize. I have another meeting that I have to run to, and so
it was a
amazing time. Please invite me next time. I love this format.
Okay. Thank you very much, Arend, for coming. And now I'll do as Google said. Thank you, Ammon, for coming. Thank you, Andrey, for answering questions. Thank you, Eric. Unfortunately, Bill wasn't here, but hopefully he will be next time with us. Okay, Ammon, as you promised, if you can answer all those questions on the website, would be great. So everybody who is watching us, Ammon is going to answer your questions. So now you can type more questions and keep him busy for another couple of hours.
By all means, I'll also, Anton, if you remind me over the next couple of days, I'll try to take a look, and there's something that I need to pitch in, I'll be happy to.
Yeah, Andrey, if you have a minute now, you can. I'll send you website, because it's a hyper comment is open there, so you are obviously more than welcome to answer.
Obviously, we've got questions lined up still for next time, so hopefully in a couple of months we'll be doing this again.
Well, as I was, April is going to be a busy month, but in May I'm hoping to see you all again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Andrey. It was always great to talk to you. Ammon, likewise. Anton, thanks for having me. I gotta scramble, so see you guys next time. Really looking forward to it.
Okay, great. See you, Eric, again. Okay, Eric gone. Obviously, Americans, they just started today. They have plenty of things to do. Now we already finished, so we kind of. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, guys, and everybody who was watching us. Thank you very much. We'll come with the same or similar, same format with a similar people again in a couple of months. In a couple means 2. Yeah. In 2 months' time. In 2 months' time, right here, we'll be talking to Andrey again, and Andrey mentions that he might bring somebody else. I don't know if it will happen. Sorry.
I'll try. I'll see if I can make it happen. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see to it. Okay, guys.
That's good, because we feel like we're ganging up on you. You know, one poor Google all alone with all these.
I feel like I'm hoarding you, right? So I don't feel very comfortable doing that. I want to spread the love a bit.
Okay, so we'll see what is going to be John Mueller, Larry Page, or I don't know who's going to be. Andrey will be here. Ammon, I'm pretty sure, will be here in 2 months' time. 2 months' time. Just watch our announcement. Thank you very much.
Guys watching this, if you want Larry to be here, start sharing this video, so we get to like 1 million views or something.
If we get 1 million views, Larry will be here, as a promise. Okay, thank you very much.